Valve is one of the biggest names in video games. They've made some of the biggest video games of all time, including 2 Portal games, and depending how you count them, 4 Half-Life games. They've also made Team Fortress and run a number of live services that are very successful. But what exactly does that mean? When people try to nail down Valve, it pretty much never works. And it's because it's pretty different. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx we ask the question, how big is Valve? We're not the first people to ask this question, not by any even vaguely measurable means. And that's because the way Valve started up, Gabe Newell, who made a lot of money working at Microsoft, just started it and did it. He didn't go out looking for investors. He didn't make it a public company so that the stock market could participate. He simply said, let's start a company. And if you've ever looked into its organizational structure, it's not a co-op by any means. Gabe Newell does hold all of the capital, meaning in theory, he could just take over at any moment, and no one could really stop him because he has all of the money and owns all of the things. But they attempt to run it like a co-op. So if he went ahead and did that, he would infuriate a lot of people who are used to the way things are run because of the way he built it. Valve is intended to be set up with a flat hierarchy where everybody can participate from a creative perspective. Now, I don't work at Valve, so I can't say whether or not this is perfectly implemented. However, it is the goal. Valve's employee handbook is publicly available, and there's 3 important points that it makes that allow it to do things this way. The first is that Valve is self-funded. I mentioned that a second ago, but not bringing in outside funding, whether that's investors or financiers of loans, grants a significant freedom that most companies just don't have. They are not really working on a timetable for anyone but themselves. Now, there is an extra reason why they can do this. It's because they own Steam. Steam is, you know, the biggest storefront in PC gaming. Outside of being a self-funded video game company, owning Steam keeps a constant influx of cash that they really don't have to do a lot to get. The second thing that allows them to do what they do is that they own all of their intellectual property. Most developers don't. A great portion of the time, the publisher is actually who owns intellectual property. And this actually was the case with the original Half-Life, but over time, Valve was able to acquire the rights from them. The third reason that they list is that they're more than a game company. They started as a very traditional game company, and they still do make video games technically, although if you don't publish them, it's arguable. But they make entertainment software, they maintain a platform, and like I said, they strive to have a flat hierarchy, and I'll quote their handbook for what exactly that means. We don't have any management, and nobody reports to anyone else. We do have a founder/president, but he isn't even your manager. This company is yours to steer towards opportunities and away from risks. You have the power to greenlight projects. You have the power to ship projects. A flat structure removes every organizational barrier between your work and the customer enjoying your work. Every company will tell you that the customer is boss, but here that statement has weight. The reason they give for doing this is that they've spent the last decade going out of its way to recruit the most intelligent, innovative, and talented people on Earth, and it doesn't want to tell them to sit at a desk and do what they're told. They think that it hurts their creativity and makes them feel alienated, which they're not wrong. There is a large amount of sociological and economic theory that points to exactly that. But nothing is perfect. To understand that Valve is huge and hierarchyless and a constant evolving mass, also has to acknowledge that it's got a lot of employees, but it's not above laying them off. In 2016, Valve had 360 employees, and just recently, 13 employees working on VR got laid off. Now, you might ask yourself, in a company where there is a flat hierarchy, how could anyone ever get laid off? Did everyone vote to lay them off? Well, probably not. According to an article about how Valve hires and fires and how much it pays, hiring is handled by a person, involves talking to an economist at Valve, as well as a number of other employees who basically all talk with each other and decide whether or not to hire. Firing is actually a similar process and involves coming to consensus about if a person can stay. If a consensus can't be made that involves a person staying, they're fired. And somehow this is basically what happened with the VR team. That happened early this year, and that really sucks for them on account they moved to a new office last year. However, Valve has slowed down making games a lot. And there's a reason for that. It's because obviously they run a highly successful video game store. They don't have to make video games. They profit from running a platform more so than creating games. Now, that doesn't mean they aren't creating games, but it's clear that without deadlines for games, it's much harder for a big company like that to justify all the work that goes into a game. That doesn't really rely on what kind of hierarchy they have. But part of this is also because Valve actively develops several live services, including Dota 2 and Counter-Strike Go. Now, putting this in terms of do they make games, the question is really, do they make games that have a beginning and an end? And again, profit motive definitely has some impact over this as well. To continually work on long-term projects that don't have an end in sight but rake in money on a daily basis is certainly going to make more money, especially in the long term, than any project that has a narrative and must be bought for a certain price. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't immediately judge the value of a live service on just them being a live service. There are definitely fun live services out there, but there are a lot of people who wish that some time and some resources were dedicated towards projects that resembled traditional video games a little bit more. And it's quite possible that, in fact, within Valve, there are people that think the same way. It's just that without the release time frame that somebody might normally be used to, nothing's been released. Does that mean nothing ever will be? I don't know. Now, being Steam is their main source of income. They've done some things to try to prevent the leaving of Steam for a nice Epic exclusive paycheck. For instance, they've made it so you can't release a game to Steam, like in early access, and then offload it to Epic, which makes sense. In fact, they're trying to make quite a few changes to Steam in order to update for what games are now. When asked if the shift from traditional games to a more service-based long-tail project has been a driving force behind a lot of new changes in Steam, including the new Steam Labs project, which has currently shown off a bunch of changes in the recommendation engine, the answer was absolutely yeah, they are shifting. And I'm quoting directly here, games have evolved to be built around being updated constantly and keep providing new value and interesting stuff for their players to do. Steam was built around selling a game and then later putting the game on discount. That's it. So understanding their operations to some extent shows really the size of the company we're dealing with. Are they a traditional games company? No, we can't genuinely make a kind of judgment based on what we would think from any other hierarchical, deadline-oriented company. Basically, they have so much money they can do pretty much whatever they want. So from a perspective of financials, they're huge, they're ridiculous, they're nothing like any other company. If you're looking at estimates for what kind of money comes in 2017, they were estimated to have brought in $4.3 billion, which is about $800 million more than they brought in 2016. Now, I don't know where it's gone since then, but that's a very large amount of money. So, unfortunately, the answer to the question, how big is Valve, is not one you can have a definitive answer to. However, relative to all of their activities and estimated income, keeping in mind they are not a public company, no one owns any part of it other than Gabe and perhaps a couple of other people, and their pay is based heavily on bonuses, and that's every single employee in the company. There's basically nothing consistent other than they've got so much money, they can do whatever forever. That's how big they are. Around 360 people just doing what they think will be good, supposedly. But, I mean, their focus is around making money, and they are. I'm not 100% certain you could have a more straight answer unless you asked Gabe Newell himself exactly how big Valve is. But about 80% of all game sales on the PC. Go through them. So big. What do you think? Leave us a comment, let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. And the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click the subscribe button and don't forget to click the notification bell. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on GameRanx.